Good day to you. This is Martin Jackson, the Vicar of St Cuthbert's Church, Benfield side, in the village of Shotley Bridge, and priest in charge of St John the Evangelist, Castleside, two communities in northwest Durham. But those who know the area will probably realise I'm not in the parishes today. If you can tell where I am, I'm not sure if I can zoom in a little so that you can see a bit better. We'll see what I can do. No, that won't work. We're going to have to remain in this particular focus and looking at things from a long distance, though I will be moving in closer to certain other things for you to look at. Today I find myself on Holy Island, the Holy Island of Lindisfarne, off the coast of Northumberland, almost up to the Scottish border. In fact, I might be able to take you to have a better view between the dunes, which you can see over there, and we're able to look up into the southern part of Scotland itself, beyond Berwick-upon-Tweed. That's to give you a geographical location. Why am I here today? Well, it's a place to come to for silence and for stillness. And particularly at this time of year, I like to be able to take a quiet day, a time for myself, which may seem a bit ironic that now I should be sharing this as a video on Facebook. But that's the way things are. These are good things to share up on Holy Island itself. It's a place of the great saints. To this island came St Aidan as he brought the mission of the monks from Iona and Melrose to Northumbria at the request of the King Oswald. Right in the far distance, I'm not sure, over there, you can see Bamborough Castle. Bamborough was the place where Oswald ruled his ancient kingdom, and he made provision for monks to come and share their Christian faith with the people of his land. But they didn't want to be too close to him, and so their request for land was that they should be given some here on Lindisfarne. It's an island in itself, but twice a day it's connected to the mainland. There's now a causeway that you can drive over and a pilgrim's causeway that you can walk over if you have the patience and if you get the tides right. Deliberately they would come here. They were close enough to Bamborough, but not too close. They would know that twice a day they'd be cut off from the mainland. In this place they could find peace for themselves, set up a rhythm. But also there was that connection to the mainland. From here they could travel throughout Northumbria and further afield as well, carrying with them the good news of the gospel. But then they're always returning to this place, a place for them of prayer and of renewal. For that it's come to be special for me as well over many years. St Aidan, the first of the monks to come and to stick at that task of mission and prayer, he'd be followed by others such as St Cuthbert, to whom one of my parishes and its church is dedicated, a special place for us. I might be able to get a bit higher in the course of streaming this video and take a look at St Cuthbert's Island as it's known. It's between the village of Holy Island, which you can see in the far distance to the left of centre, and Bamborough. It's an island as well that's tidal, and probably, in fact, as I arrived on the island here, I wouldn't have been able to make my way over to St Cuthbert's Island, as even a shorter time in which that small island is connected to the larger island of Lindisfarne. Why do I come at this particular time of year? Well, it's June. You might find that the weather is better. In fact, as I left home today, the sun was shining upon me. It was warm, but I've come here and now I find lots of cloud, which is slightly disappointing. A parishioner who was here yesterday was saying that it was boiling hot. Maybe the sun will come out later. But in a sense, that's secondary to us. I've come here to find some peace this day. I've come here as well, particularly though at this time of year, because it's the time of the anniversary of my ordination. It was 40 years ago yesterday that I was ordained deacon, and the day before that, the 39th anniversary of my ordination as a priest. And so at this time in particular, I like to ask myself, what was I committing myself to in making my vows and promises as deacon and priest? How faithful have I been in keeping to those promises? How am I able to serve God? How am I able to serve the people of the communities in which I live? These are questions which we might all need to be asking ourselves. You see, there's nobody else at all in the shot all around here. I'll go in a few minutes, I think, onto one of the other dunes and look down on a beach. Again, pretty well vast and empty, one of the biggest beaches I know. But I'd like to begin with a psalm which I've just been saying today. Today's also the feast of, well, you can commemorate it either as the feast of St. Peter the Apostle or the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul the Apostles, each of them with a mission of their own. Peter, who is the first to confess Jesus to be the Christ, the Messiah, who will have a particular mission to his people, the Jews. Paul, like him, a Jew, but with a more specific mission to the Gentiles. We can give thanks for both of them. As I say, I found myself saying this psalm today as I arrived on the island. It's a psalm which can be used particularly in remembering St. Peter. Peter himself, given that name by Jesus, it means rock. Psalm 125. Those who put their trust in the Lord shall be as Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken but endures forever. As the mountains stand about Jerusalem, so stands the Lord about his people, from this time forward, forevermore. For the scepter of wickedness shall have no sway over the land apportioned to the righteous, lest the righteous set their hands to do evil. Do good, O Lord, to those who are good, to those that are upright in heart. As for those who turn aside to crooked ways, let the Lord lead them away with the evildoers. And in Israel, let there be peace. Well, I've parked my car beyond those buildings that you can see in the near distance. This is the part of the island that's known as the Snook. And if you don't want to be paying parking charges in the main part of the island, the Snook is the place to park on. Although you'll then have a 3-mile walk if you actually want to get into the village, which you can see in the further distance. I think they've filmed TV series such as Vicar here and used some of the buildings. As I'm looking, I can see 2 deer as well that are running. I didn't expect to find deer here amongst the dunes. But it's also a place where you can find the things that you just didn't expect. I parked the car, I walked through the dunes, then through this flat area that's here, and then I was surprised myself to find this really quite lush green area. Look at the wonderful small flowers that are there about us. There's a whole variety of vegetation, and ignorant person that I am, I'm afraid I can't name most of it. I came down and thought how wonderful it would be just to walk into this, and then realised that what I'm looking at is actually a small lake and some bog as well, so you've got to be careful how you go there. But as you come down, at least the wind drops, and there's calm, and there's peacefulness. I brought myself some things to read as well. There is a prayer book, And it's the prayer book that was in use at the time that I was ordained, back in 1981, 1982. The alternative service book, as it was known, no longer in use, but it's useful because it has just about everything that you need for any service. So I've got it with me. And that includes the readings which can be used as well. Let me read to you here from a gospel for today, for the feast. Well, it's the feast both of St. Peter and also the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul. And here in St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 16, we hear something of that recognition on Peter's behalf of who this man is, Jesus. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he put this question to his disciples: "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say he's John the Baptist, some Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But you," he said, "who do you say I am?" Then Simon Peter spoke up. "You are the Christ," he said, "the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Simon, son of Jonah, you are a happy man, because it was not flesh and blood that revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. So I now say to you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of the underworld can never hold out against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be considered bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be considered loosed in heaven." Then he gave the disciples strict orders not to tell anyone that he was the Christ. Who do people say the Son of Man is? And the disciples begin to hedge about. They don't give a straight answer. Well, some people say he's John the Baptist. Others say, Elijah. Jeremiah, one of the prophets. Are they willing to commit themselves? But who do you say I am? Jesus asks. I think that's the fundamental question for all of us who would want to embark on the path of discipleship. It's recognizing who is the one that we follow, or say that we follow. And it's Simon Peter who will say, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." I need to be renewed continually in answering that question. I suspect that we all do. Peter is such an important saint for me. When I first presided at the Eucharist as a priest, it was in celebrating this festival of Peter, first of the apostles, but also the most human of them all, a man strengthened in his faith, bold to confess it, but so frequently failing and needing to be renewed. It's Peter who first confesses Jesus to be the Christ, but it's Peter as well who'll deny Jesus when he's put on trial. Are we faithful in our calling? Well, I want to use the hours that I have here on the island before the tide comes back in, also for prayer. And I found myself bringing books which I've been using for the last 40 years and more. One of them that I've discovered on my shelf is Seeds of the Desert by Renewal. And it's a book that looks first at the life of and then meditates on that life of Charles de Foucault, a Frenchman who lived at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. A man who was in search of something in which to believe. He had a varied life. He was a soldier at one point. He tests his vocation as a monk. He gives that up He goes and lives in a hut in the garden of a convent in Nazareth. He doesn't deal with that. Tests his vocation as a Carthusian monk, and then finally takes himself, having been ordained priest, to live in North Africa, in the desert amongst the Tuareg people. He has a mission to proclaim Christ, but he does so quietly, seeking to live what he calls the hidden life of Christ in Nazareth. It's to come close to Christ that he saw was important, to find him in prayer. He didn't make any converts. He wanted to found a community, but no one joined him during his life. He would die in 1916, murdered. It's said that some people thought he might have been a spy during the First World War. A spy on whom, you might ask, in the North African desert. But then people came to understand something of what he was doing and his inspiration. And René Voillaume was amongst those who founded the community of the Little Brothers of Jesus, seeking also to live as he had, but taking their life of prayer into the city, looking to what the life of Jesus in Nazareth, the hidden life, might have meant, going to the desert as part of their preparation for their life as monks, spending probably a year in the desert, and then going back. What was it that inspired Brother Charles himself? Well, he wrote, and let me read to you something of what he did write. First, of that inspiration to look to Nazareth. He was at the time staying in a monastery, but then he went one day from that monastery to pay a visit, he says, to a family of very poor working people in the neighbouring village. The shock he received on seeing how these people lived by comparison with life at the monastery, simple and hard as this was, he recorded thus on his return. Oh, the difference between these buildings of ours and that poor working man's house. It makes me long for Nazareth. From then on, Nazareth was to embody his ideal for the religious life, and this was to comprise the hard toil, the low scale of living, the meagre housing, and the insecurity of a family of workers. The nature of Christian perfection is the same for all who've been baptized, whether lay or religious, and the religious life is definable simply as a particular body of means to that end. Father de Foucault himself emphasized that the ideal model for any to follow was the mystery of Nazareth. And so he sought to live out that life that would have place for peace, for quiet, but never moving away from where people are themselves. Here's something that René Voillaume writes in Meditation. Everyone is naturally present to the reality of this visible world in which he has his being and to which he adheres with all his senses. The Christian, and in a special way the contemplative, must also be present to invisible reality. The thing which marks a person of prayer is precisely this awareness, this responsiveness, this active aliveness to the entire universe, or in other words, to the world of visible things which he touches with his senses, and that of invisible things which he reaches through faith at one and the same time. He must be the more present to things invisible as they are the more real, in the full sense of the word real. The Carthusian monk or the Carmelite nun leaves the visible world in order to reach the reality of the invisible world. The vocation of the Little Brothers is to embrace both simultaneously. Well, that might be hard to take in. I think I have a lot to meditate on today. But it's bringing together the visible and the invisible. There's a deer running across the dunes in the distance again. I don't know if you can see it, so distant as it is even to me, as I'm looking more directly than you through the lens of a camera. But let me take you from where I am now. A piece of lushness, a place where things are visible, but the invisible may be revealed in the stillness. And to walk up this dune now, I have to be careful as I go. Just walking around here, and I hope I've been careful as to where I've been sitting. There are so many little different plants, but amongst them there are the piri-piri burrs, as they're known. There you see them. And there are warnings when you come into the dunes that you should remove any that might stick themselves onto you. They're quite beautiful when you look at them, tiny as they are. You might take them for granted. But it's important that they shouldn't be spread beyond their immediate natural habitat. What can we be spreading, and what are we spreading as we go on? Is it something that's good? Is it something that's less than good because we fail in our calling? Here we are again, looking over the buildings of the Snook. Still going up this dune. Look at all that grows from this. The dunes themselves, of course, shifting sand. But they're given some stability by all that grows in them. The grass and the other vegetation here too. What are the things that can grow in our lives and give us stability? Are we renewed so that good things may grow? Well, here we are on what, when I first arrived, was a completely deserted beach. There's just one person now walking across it. As the tide goes still further out, there'll be a vast expanse here of sand. Even a single flower can bring great beauty wherever it may sprout. Here we're looking to again over to the village on Holy Island, and then more or less in the centre as you're looking, there's St Cuthbert's Island, further place of retreat where it's said that Cuthbert would take himself so that he could escape that community of which he was the abbot on the island. In times of renewal he lived, and of course he'd take himself still further away to live on the inner farn out in the sea offshore from Bamborough. The yapping of a dog, but also beautiful sounds of bird song. The hills into which Cuthbert, Aidan before him, and their brothers would travel to nurture the growing Christian communities. Let's see if I can get a little further up on this next dune. The thing about Holy Island, as I said, is you have to be careful with the tides. There was somebody, I think, had to be rescued just last week. Don't try to cheat them. Obey the tide times on the tide table that you find. Heed the warnings. One of the things I like to do actually is to come over to the island just before the tide comes in. I sometimes say that as the tide comes in, the visitors go out. Even now I can see there's a great stream of traffic that's coming across the causeway onto the island now that it's opened up. If you come just before the tide comes in, well, everybody will be going in the other direction. You have the island to yourself. But you have the island to yourself more or less, even when the crowds are here, because so many of them just confine themselves to the village. It always rather surprises me that they do this. These birds flying. You only have to go half a mile or so to escape the village, to find yourself in fields, to find yourself on near deserted beaches, and then you can make your way right the way along this north side of the island with scarcely anyone to encounter. Charles de Foucault, René Voillaume, those others, little brothers and sisters of Jesus, take themselves to the desert so that there they can hear Christ speak to them, and so that then they're fitted too for service. But they do go back to communities in which they may pray and live and work and witness. That's something that I always seek to be renewed in when I come here, particularly at this time, the anniversary of my ordination. And I bring with me the reminder of those ministries to which I committed myself. It's not only my own anniversary, I know there are many people celebrating at this time, but also on Saturday of this week we'll be celebrating the ordination of our curate Phil Carter as priest. He'll be ordained priest in Durham Cathedral. It'll be a much stripped down ordination service, I'm afraid, from mine. Remember, mine took about 2.5 hours, and that's in a cathedral which can have a capacity of up to 2,500 people. I'm afraid that with social distancing this year, Phil's restricted to having 8 guests. There'll be just the priests ordained on Saturday, 12 of them. So I hope that you'll keep them in your prayers. Let me read something of what the bishop said at my ordination service. First, as I was ordained deacon. A deacon is called to serve the Church of God and to work with its members in caring for the poor, the needy, the sick, and all who are in trouble. He is to strengthen the faithful, search out the careless and the indifferent, and to preach the word of God in the place to which he is licensed. A deacon assists the priest under whom he serves in leading the worship of the people, especially in the administration of the Holy Communion. He may baptize when required to do so. It is his general duty to do such pastoral work as is entrusted to him. Well, the language, of course, has been revised since 1981 when I was ordained, when only men were ordained, not only as priests but also as deacons. Since then, I'm glad to say that the ministry of the Church has opened up more widely. First women ordained as deacons, and then from 1994 as priests, and still more recently as bishops too. That last is not a ministry to which I'm aspiring. The work of the deacon is a work first of service, pastoral in its nature, and care. I wondered whether I might have come here yesterday for the actual anniversary of my ordination. Actually, it was far better to be in the parish and to be able to visit from door to door, not into people's houses, but seeing them at their doorstep, as long as they could stand. A few of them being able to go into their gardens, sit at a distance with them, all the time to try and come close. The ministry of a deacon, it's specific insofar as it entails ordination, but it is in itself a witness, because it's a ministry that all may share when it entails care for others. So it's my prayer that as a deacon I may seek not only to serve, but also to encourage others in their lives of service, of care for one another. Then there's that further ordination as well to priesthood. First be a deacon before you are ordained priest. The first call is to service. Then the call to priesthood. It's a privilege to be able to serve as a priest. And that privilege can only be worked out in relation to the people who are served, who are ministered to. And these words of the bishop to those about to be ordained priest are particularly important. A priest is called by God to work with the bishop and with his fellow priests as servant and shepherd among the people to whom he's sent. He's to proclaim the word of the Lord, to call his hearers to repentance, and in Christ's name to absolve and declare the forgiveness of sins. He's to baptize and to prepare the baptized for confirmation. He's to preside at the celebration of the Holy Communion. He's to lead his people in prayer and worship, to intercede for them, to bless them in the name of the Lord, and to teach and encourage by word and example. He's to minister to the sick and prepare the dying for their death. He must set the Good Shepherd always before him as the pattern of his calling, caring for the people committed to his charge and joining with them in a common witness to the world. And then those to be ordained are reminded of the ways they must work that out as messengers, watchmen, stewards of the Lord, by teaching, by provision, by reaching out, searching for Christ's children in the wilderness of this world. And then, the part that strikes home for me, remember always with thanksgiving that the treasure now to be entrusted to you is Christ's own flock, bought through the shedding of his blood on the cross. The church and congregation among whom you will serve are one with him. They're his body. Serve them with joy. Build them up in faith, and do all in your power to bring them to loving obedience to Christ. And it goes on, you can't do this in your own strength, only if you're guided by the Holy Spirit, strengthened by the grace and power of God, if you live out a rich understanding of the Scriptures. So true for all of us. I got to make my way down and almost finished now, but before I reach the beach, I hope I'll be able to pray with you for a short time. Not quite sure how I make my way down from this dune. That in itself says something, doesn't it? How do we make our way through life? The way isn't always clear. It can require some searching. And sometimes there are difficult paths, and it may seem almost treacherous slopes that we negotiate on our way. We should never actually be rash in our boldness. So proper preparation always to be made, but always an understanding of our calling. Thankfully, I've managed to get down from that particular dune. I think there's just this very slight slope now, and then I should reach the beach. And the plan is that then I'm going to walk along it. There's quite an expanse even to my left over there, but I'm not going to be going that way. I'm going to be heading towards the village itself. Always, though, the path brightened by the flowers that we might encounter on the way. I remember first coming here, a friend brought me and parked his car on the other side of this part of the island called the Snook, which is a narrow section itself, something of an isthmus. We cut our way across from the road over the dunes and then came down onto the beach. There was no one else there. So few people realise this is here. And what I'm always struck by is the simple vast expanse of the sands. There's so much in our world that is just so big, if only we'll look at it. And often we're closed in, hemmed in, we might feel, when we have so many cares. And we need to be reminded of the sheer extent of God's love, massiveness of His creation, the expanse into which we can ourselves move. Well, I'm going to be leaving you here, but we might end in prayer. Pray always as Jesus taught His disciples. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Finally, the prayer which we use for this feast of St. Peter the Apostle, a prayer which I prayed that first time when I presided at the Eucharist, knowing its privilege, knowing how Christ called Peter, promised him the strength of His grace, even in his frailty, as He promises us. Almighty God, who inspired your Apostle St. Peter to confess Jesus as Christ and Son of the living God, build up your church upon this rock, that in unity and peace it may proclaim one truth and follow one Lord, your Son, our Saviour, Jesus Christ, who is alive and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. So, I'm still waiting for the sun to break through. We have the cloud, but mercifully no rain, nor is it forecast. Just a few people walking here. I'll be making my way on down the beach in this direction. And so I wish you a good day for the rest of this time, whenever you may be watching. and may you know God's blessing and renewal in His Spirit.